Have you noticed how so many of the top chart analysts in crypto are all saying the same thing right now? It feels like we're perfectly set up for Bitcoin to take off on a massive upward move, leading to a final parabolic rally for altcoins. And you know what that could mean for us. XRP finally hitting price discovery and blowing everyone's minds. It's exciting because when this many talented analysts are on the same page, it usually plays out just like they predict. I've been in this space long enough to see it happen time and time again. This really feels like one of those moments where everything is lining up perfectly. Big things could be just around the corner. So there's a bit of debate going on about what the timeline might look like. Some people think it's going to happen a little sooner than others, but honestly, I don't think anyone's disagreeing on the key factors that will make it possible in the first place. I've got some insights to share from various XRP chart analysts, including one who's talking about a path to the moon. Yes, that's an actual quote. And honestly, after seeing the chart they shared, I can't really argue with it. XRP is looking moonbound, folks. But before we dive in, just a quick heads up. I don't have a financial background and this isn't financial advice. Just sharing some interesting perspectives. Hey there, just a quick heads up. I'm not a financial advisor, so don't buy or sell anything based on what I say or write. I'm just a crypto enthusiast who loves making YouTube videos about crypto topics as a fun hobby. All right, as I'm recording this, it's Thursday, June 26, 2025. XRP is sitting at $2.09 and Bitcoin's at $107,000.00, just barely above that. Right, if you're curious about how Judge Torres' decision might be affecting XRP, check out my last video. I went over the potential market impact specifically around XRP and shared some thoughts. I won't dive into that topic again in this video, but if you're curious, check out my last video, the least moon level hot jam. Today, I want to focus more on why we're so perfectly set up right now and what that means for XRP. Spoiler alert, if these predictions are right, it could mean a big price surge for XRP. Personally, I think they're onto something, and I'm excited to share more with you. Check out this post from Raoul Pal, one of the biggest names in crypto with 1.2 million followers, and for good reason. He's the founder and CEO of Global Macro Investor and Real Vision, plus a former Goldman Sachs exec. Oh, and by the way, he does hold some XRP. Now, it might not be the thing he's most hyped about, and that's totally fine. Not everyone has to be as excited about it as I am, though honestly, they should be. It's one of the most useful cryptos out there. What I really appreciate about Raoul is how committed he is to finding the truth. He's not right 100% of the time. None of us are, but you can tell he genuinely wants to get it right. And that's what makes him stand out. I've been following him for so long now, probably over half a decade by this point. What I admire most is that he's always focused on finding the truth. That's the best way to approach life, don't you think? Anyway, check out what he shared this afternoon. It's worth a look. Someone asked, when Banana Zone? Basically, when are things going to take off? And he responded with some solid insights. In Real Vision Pro and Global Macro Investor, they called the start back in September 2024. Since then, Bitcoin has doubled and high quality altcoins have seen 3x to 5x growth. And yes, that actually happened. At its peak, XRP was up over 500%. Now it's just consolidating, but wow, what a ride so far. That kind of pullback is totally expected after a massive rally like that. But yeah, you're right. The quality altcoins are holding up pretty well. The market is finally doing what we've all been hoping and expecting it to do for years now. As a community, we've believed that eventually market prices would catch up to the true value of XRP. It's been held down artificially for so long, and now we're finally seeing the early stages of that shift. But this is just the beginning. There's still plenty of room for growth ahead. Speaking of which, he mentioned that we saw the phase one correction between January and April, and the low was called back in April based on the M2 charts, which ties to liquidity. He's talking about global M2. That's his thing. You can check out M2 from country to country, but here he's specifically referring to the most liquid money in the world. And according to him, the M2 chart is hitting an acceleration point. Rates are dropping, the dollar is losing strength, and the only thing left for alt season to kick off is the ISM moving decisively above 50. If your token isn't performing, it might be time to rethink your allocation. That's the playbook. And honestly, that makes sense. I don't think every single coin is going to hit a new all-time high. In fact, last cycle, only about 20% of coins did, or maybe even less. Sure, the whole market tends to move together, but when it comes to truly entering price discovery from a previous cycle, Not a lot of coins make it. What this really means is if your coin doesn't reach those heights, you might need to rethink your picks and ask yourself why. That's why I tend to focus on utility. It's just so much clearer and more reliable. As for interest rates coming down, we'll have to wait and see. There's been a lot of talk among analysts about that today. Here's an update from Mikey Bull Crypto that caught my eye. He's pointing out that the odds of a September interest rate cut have skyrocketed to 94%. So where does that number come from? Well, if you take the left bar here and combine it with the middle one, 78.9% plus 22.7%, you get that 94% rounded up. Historically, when the market leans this heavily in one direction, it often ends up being right. With everything going on, geopolitical tensions, macroeconomic shifts, the usual chaos, it's definitely plausible. Now, of course, Powell hasn't been too keen on touching the federal funds rate recently, especially right before an election, but hey, things can always change, right? All right, so here's the deal. 94% odds say this is happening. Only 6.4% think things will stay the same, and no one expects an increase. Pretty clear, right? Now, I get it. People tend to put more weight on this than they probably should. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. If it does go this way, here's what it means. More people and businesses will feel confident taking on debt because of lower interest rates. That means more spending, more investment, and overall a boost in economic activity. Of course, this doesn't happen during inflationary times because that would make things worse. But in this case, if they pull the trigger, it's just another way to keep money flowing and keep the wheels turning. Here's a fun update from a chart analyst that's worth sharing. They're predicting a new all-time high for Bitcoin following the S&P 500 because guess what? The S&P 500 hit a new all-time high today, June 26th. While it didn't close at a record high, it still reached the highest point in history earlier in the day. It's only a matter of time before it officially closes above that mark. Now let's talk about all those doom and gloom predictions from earlier this year. Remember back in April when people were panicking over geopolitical issues and other scary headlines? Where are those doomsayers now? Turns out all that fear about ruining the alt season and everything else was just noise. Look at what's actually happening. Positive momentum. The S&P 500 was hovering around 4,900 not too long ago, and now it's nearing 6,200. Wow, what a huge move for the S&P 500 in such a short time. One of the biggest rebounds in history. Pretty incredible stuff, right? Just take a moment to appreciate what we're witnessing here. Everything seems to be lining up so perfectly. Now, if you're like me and you're all about crypto, especially XRP, this is why it's so important to pay attention to everything happening right now. All the pieces are falling into place, and this is exactly the kind of setup you want if you're gearing up for that moon mission. Oh, and check this out. This comes from chart analyst X-Force Global. Ethereum has been making some seriously bullish moves on the shorter time frames. The data shows it's still on track to hit new all-time highs this cycle, potentially landing somewhere between $9,000 and $10,000. Remember just a couple of months ago when people were saying Ethereum was dead because the price dropped to around $1,400? The argument was basically, if the price is that low, how could Ethereum possibly be useful? Sound familiar? They said the same thing about XRP back in 2024. Here's the deal. Price alone doesn't tell you if an asset is fundamentally strong or useful. Markets can swing too far in either direction. It happens all the time. That's exactly what we saw here. The fundamentals of Ethereum didn't suddenly change or get worse. Whether you're a fan of Ethereum or not, its utility didn't just disappear overnight. The market has trusted Ethereum's fundamentals for years now. Sure, there have been some changes along the way, no denying that, but it's still enough to keep Ethereum firmly in that number 2 spot by market cap. Nothing fundamentally got worse, even when the price dropped. So are we really supposed to believe that was the end of Ethereum? Come on, that never made sense. I've said it here so many times because it's true. Riding off Ethereum like that was just plain ridiculous. And honestly, it reminds me of the same nonsense people said about XRP back in 2024. All right, here's the deal. If the market keeps rallying, Ethereum could once again lead the way into alt season, which it's known to do. And honestly, that's great news if you're hoping for XRP to skyrocket in value. Now, let's talk numbers. A lot of predictions are throwing around a $9,000, $0 to $10,000, 0 cents range for Ethereum. If we hit the high end of that and XRP follows suit to challenge for the 2 spot in market cap, we could be looking at $20 XRP. Crazy? Honestly, not really. Of course, no one has a crystal ball here. Some analysts are playing it safer with predictions around $10 for XRP, which could totally happen too. but $20 is definitely within the realm of possibility. At the end of the day, the more money that flows into crypto, the higher these prices can go. Check out this post from Crypto Wizard. It's a Bitcoin USD chart, and he's saying, don't bet against it. Summer might usually be slow, right? But take a closer look. Summer in a post-halving year is anything but slow. You can see the pattern yourself. Post-halving years have always been bullish. Final wave, anyone? It's looking like we're at just the right place at just the right time in history for a massive move to the upside before this cycle wraps up. He also points out the halving here. While I don't think it's the trigger time-wise, he's definitely onto something. Well, he didn't say anything wrong there. Sure, there's a clear correlation between the market and Bitcoin halving. They do seem to move in sync, but let's not forget other things also show almost perfect correlation, like the US election cycle. Does that mean the election is driving it? Probably not. So what else happens every 4 years? Well, there's global M2 money supply, and that lines up to, honestly, that one might be more important. Why? Because all the Bitcoin that could ever exist has already been mined. So if I had to pick, I'd bet on global M2 being the bigger factor here. Take a look at this. It's pretty fascinating. I've been talking about this a lot lately, but no one seems to have shared a chart that goes this far back. This one takes us all the way to 2013. Check it out. The rocket in 2013, then another big one in 2017, and again in 2021. Notice a pattern. Every 4 years, we see a major move. Now, here we are 4 years later waiting for the next big one. So what do you think is coming next, and what could that mean for altcoins? Personally, I'm thinking we're heading way, way higher. Another great post from Crypto Wizard. XRP is showing some exciting signs on the chart. Definitely a path to the moon. I love seeing this kind of analysis. Back in 2017, XRP broke through a multi-year resistance and never looked back, and now it's repeating a similar pattern. Sure, it's taking a bit longer this time, but as they say, the longer the consolidation, the bigger the explosion. Honestly, I completely agree with the overall message here. All right, so after looking at this for nearly 7.5 years now, and not the whole thing, some of it was still playing out, I've had a lot of time to really think about it. And honestly, at this point, there hasn't been a ton of movement yet, though of course it could still play out further. But here's what I'm seeing. If you look at this first section where I'm moving my mouse on the screen, this part right here looks like the first leg up. Then we moved sideways for a bit. And after that, we had this big blow off top, which I'm pointing to right now. Now, if you remember, we didn't see much of a bull run in the last cycle, and that was mostly thanks to the SEC drama. Yeah, we all know how that went. But check this out. Look at where I'm moving my mouse now. I think this is pretty similar to that first pump we saw back in 2017. We've been moving sideways for about the same amount of time now. So if a breakout happens soon, the timing would actually line up pretty well. Of course, that's not to say things can take longer. Some people believe the market's slowing down and that could impact XRP. That's definitely a possibility. But honestly, everything looks pretty familiar to me so far, which is a good reason to stay optimistic. History has a way of repeating itself. And given how artificially suppressed XRP has been, a big move just makes sense at this point. Here's a great post from the great Matsby that really puts things into perspective. Remember when Coinbase, the stock using the coin ticker symbol, was trading around $150, 0 cents just 2 months ago? It felt like the sky was falling, right? But look at it now. Altcoins are going through the same phase right now, shaking out the weak hands. They're not in trouble. They're actually setting up perfectly in this accumulation zone. If you're not stacking up on altcoins now, you'll probably end up chasing them later, just like many are doing with Coinbase now. I totally agree with this take. And the Great Gatsby is one of the analysts who really nailed it when it came to predicting XRP's big move this cycle. Here's a post from the blockchain backer. And once again, he's talking about Coinbase. This makes his third day in a row. Honestly, I'm glad he's diving into this because I didn't realize just how strong the correlation was until now. But that's not even the most interesting part. What really stands out is how Coinbase seems to be leading the charge. It's driving what's happening with Total 3, which, by the way, is the entire crypto market cap for the top 125 coins, excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's the green line on the chart. XRP is part of that green line too. So when Coinbase starts taking off, whatever the reason may be, and feel free to speculate because that's always a fun discussion, it seems to spark optimism in the crypto space. When people feel more confident and ready to take on risk, it looks like the money flows into Coinbase first and then trickles down into the altcoins. So here's the deal. He's been talking about this for 3 days now, and it's honestly so fascinating. Have you noticed how Coinbase has been absolutely skyrocketing lately? What do you think's coming next? This morning, he pointed out that Coinbase just broke past its November 2021 high, and he said, "You're still not bullish enough on your altcoins." Gotta say, I couldn't agree more. Oh, and guess what else hit a brand new all-time high today? Yep, Coinbase stock. I can't remember if it closed above, but I think it hit around $371 or something close to that. The exact number doesn't even matter. The point is, it's a brand new all-time high. If you're not bullish yet, it might be time to rethink things. Big things are happening, folks. Here's a post from chart analyst Crypto V featuring the XRP/USD chart. His message: now isn't the time to be bearish. He's added a fractal here, most likely the 2017 one, because let's be honest, that's the go-to for everyone. It definitely makes sense in this context. You could argue about whether it should have been shifted back a bit, but honestly, that's not the main takeaway. If things play out like this, it's an exciting setup to keep an eye on. But first, let's keep it simple. First, the rocket goes up, then it moves sideways, and then it rockets again. You see what I mean? That's why I'm saying, even if you push this back a bit, we're still looking at roughly the same timeline as we saw a couple of cycles ago, like in 2017 into 2018. Now, that's not to say it couldn't take longer, but things are looking pretty solid right now. And look at how high this could go. The argument here is that if it even just mimics that previous cycle, XRP could be headed closer to $16.00. Yes, please. I'll take that. Here's a post from chart analyst Greg Crypto. So to Valhalla, has anything changed? According to Greg, not at all. He's pointing out that the current chart pattern with XRP looks like a bullish pennant. And you know what that could mean. Double-digit price action ahead. Looks like we just need to hang in there and stay patient a little longer. Here's an update from Crypto Insight UK. XRP is showing some really promising signs on the weekly chart. If XRP closes at this level or higher, it'll mark the first bullish engulfing candle on a higher low since our local top back in January. This could mean we're wrapping up the recent consolidation and accumulation phase. Do you see where I'm coming from? If this plays out, it's a textbook repeat of what happened 2 cycles ago. History seems to be following the same pattern, and everything is lining up so perfectly right now. Honestly, I can't see how XRP doesn't just blow the competition out of the water, because let's face it, it's already leading the pack this cycle. It looks like we're likely to see this trend continue. One analyst mentioned that the next few days will be important to watch closely. They could lead to a weekly bullish cross on both the RSI and stochastic RSI. Finally, what I'd really like to see is a strong push and a close above the descending trend line we've been tracking. If XRP is gearing up for its next move, it could be a big one, around an 8% jump from here. If this is the moment, I think it'll be a bold and aggressive move. Honestly, an 8% gain is just the beginning if things really take off. Another analyst seems to agree. And just looking at the XRP chart, we're really getting close to something big here. So as we move through 2024, there's going to be a time, maybe weeks, maybe even months, where everything feels like it's just waiting to happen. But we know the pieces are in place and we're ready. And when things start to click, it's going to be huge. If these analysts are right, we're heading into another one of those exciting moments. Honestly, I won't be surprised if they are. It just feels like everything's lining up perfectly. Check out this update from chart analyst Casey Trades on XRP/USD. No need to panic. XRP is just experiencing a controlled pullback. The recent volatility came after Judge Torres denied Ripple's request for early judgment clarification in the SEC case, but let's not lose sight of the bigger picture, the chart. Technically, nothing major has changed. This drop is part of a developing ABC correction, and the overall structure is still intact. We're likely wrapping up the C wave of the correction. This is where technical analysis really shines. It helps us focus on the structure instead of getting caught up in the emotion. Big picture, XRP is still holding above the 0.5 retrace level, and there's no sign of a trend shift. Here's what I'm keeping an eye on next. A potential final dip. I'm targeting a low around $2.07 to $2.10, with $2 acting as major macro support. I don't expect it to break. What's interesting is that the relative strength index on smaller time frames is already hinting at seller exhaustion. Exactly the kind of confluence we want to see ahead of a final low and potential reversal. Once those support levels are hit, I'll be watching closely for a confirmed bullish divergence to signal the end of this correction. That's just what I've been tracking this morning. And honestly, there's a reason so many analysts are bullish right now. If you're not, I'd love to hear why. Drop your thoughts in the comments. As always, just a friendly reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. Don't buy or sell anything based on what I say here. It's always important to do your own research. Thanks for following along.